Hello and welcome to our ongoing series of conversations with people that are bringing clarity to our digital lives. Very fortunate today to catch up with Michael Honeycutt. He leads product marketing at a company called Corero. I had the privilege of meeting Mike as he was a finalist at the Belden Innovation Awards, where he made the shortlist and was in fact one of the top three finalists in an extremely rigorous competition to illustrate the role of innovation across a great variety of applications. This in this particular case, Belden was focused on industrial operations, and Corero made the cut. Michael gave the pitch. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Lane, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So, of course, the for those that don't know, because they weren't there, the nature of your pitch really revolved around how it is that we can defend mid-market organizations and mid-market industrial operations in particular, especially given the evolution of what I'll call this new generation of AI-driven DDoS attacks that have been attacking infrastructure and are really prompting organizations to reshape their cybersecurity strategies. Before we jump into what that means, perhaps Mike, you can give us a little bit of a sense of where Corero fits into the ecosystem and what it is exactly that you guys do.
Yeah, I think most people may know us, Corero Network Security, as a global leader in DDoS protection solutions, right? But I think it's a lot broader in the context that we like to talk about is service availability and business continuity, right? And so, especially in the IT or OT world, right, the repercussions, the externalities that have to do with business downtime and how important it is just to keep operations running. That's the business that we're in. And we, just recently, we're just named through the Spark Matrix, which is an analyst, third-party analyst. We're an innovator and a leader in the space. And so we're very proud to be there, and we're doing some really exciting things.
So further validation of what Belden is already recognized. And it's true. It's difficult to look at risk management solutions in the siloed manner that perhaps characterized the way we approach things 5, 10, 15 years ago. But DDoS remains a vector of threat. And I know that you guys are broader, but maybe you can help me understand, especially in the context of this era of AI, what is the state of the attacks that are being experienced and how are you seeing sort of folks respond?
So two sides, right? So on the malicious attacker side, it's democratizing, right? So they can spin up and scale attacks a lot faster, right? But then on how you protect it, what we're seeing is latency sensitive, right? Issues, right? So, if we're working with data center solutions providers right now that are seeing this, that, hey, if they're running AI operations, a second or so of downtime, just like similar to the OT world, that shuts everything down, right? So that latency sensitivity ties back to the need for an on-premises solution. It ties back to being flexibility. It ties back to being adaptive and providing that solution. And so that's what we're seeing with AI is a couple of things. Like not only the democratization and how easy these attacks can be spun up, but how do we deal with them from the protection side and adapt to the defenses?
These denial of service attacks remain a major threat. The headlines have been shifting towards this ransomware operations, but it's often part of that sort of hybrid strategy that the bad actors are implementing. How are you seeing mid-market organizations in particular? It's one thing for large enterprises that have a dedicated CISO and a whole team, a network and security operations center that's keeping an eye out for this. But how are mid-market organizations responding?
Of course, they're looking for the easy button, right? They're looking for, something doesn't require complex tuning. They're looking for something that's automated and something that's, is proactive, right? And I think the proactive nature is really, that's the buzzword, right? And that's really what Corero does. We come in and we adapt. So topology doesn't matter. We're going to fit in where we need to fit, which is also from a business value point. It doesn't create a cost, right? So that barrier to entry is no longer there. But then, like you said, yeah, you don't need a SOC. You don't. We will manage it, and very few will do that. Very few can say that in our space. We'll manage it and we'll take care of it. And then, by the way, we looked at your traffic, right? So we go through a POC. We're seeing the traffic that's coming into your organization, and we're already blocking and mitigating those things beforehand. And of course, that's adaptive, right? Over time, those things can be tuned. But the whole point is that you get peace of mind. You can run your business. So you're talking about these mid-sized organizations that don't have the budget for these things. You can run your business and focus on what really matters and let us take care of the bad guys.
All right, so let's break that down a little bit. It sounds like you're describing some sort of a SaaS offering, a software as a service offering. Are you running all traffic through Prism, the Corero environment? Where and what impact does that have, say, on performance, on latency, and things like that?
Yeah. So essentially, we will adapt to the architecture that already exists. So if it is on premises, that means it's inline, right? And so there is virtually no latency there. We're capturing traffic in real time. If it's out of band, or what we call data path, or we're having to use scrubbing, of course, there's always going to be a little bit of latency introduced in that way, but not in the way that a cloud provider, like if you're having to constantly swing traffic to the cloud, there's a lot more latency. So we're talking about milliseconds of a difference, which is not as impactful as I just mentioned as through the cloud. But another thing there is you touched on is, yes, we offer both hardware and software. Software will run on a VM. We can also run on routers. So, if you have a router, which most companies do, right? So you're getting signal somewhere. So we can enforce on that router, right? So again, less upfront investment, less CapEx, which is another model that we're running, right? So we're focusing on that OpEx ARR thing, so we can reduce the burden of the initial upfront cost, and then you can allow you to sort of amortize that cost across several years. And so it's not such a burden on you. And that flexible model is very attractive.
All right, so you're turning what would typically be a CapEx operation, and you're stringing it out so it looks like a subscription service. On the material, on the aspect of your value proposition that is being executed on-prem, are those being managed from a centralized Corero facility? In other words, is it just there and it's serving as a protected environment in a kind of a siloed manner, or is it part of a network managed solution that Corero can address, even if it's operating on an asset that's behind the firewall of an organization that is your client?
It can be both ways, right? So we can manage it. We can manage it, for you, or you can go in and plug in and management. The other thing is that we work within APIs, right? So if you, again, we get to this single pane of glass thing. So if you already have a dashboard that you built, that you're looking at, your firewalls as well, you can see all of that traffic in one space. And that's another way to simplify it. So again, I want to go back to the flexibility manner. We'll do it how you want to. We certainly don't want that to be a barrier to entry. And, we're not like some of our competitors. We're saying you've got to have this set up and it's got to be tuned this way. No, we'll allow you to, ultimately the end game is to block malicious traffic, not get into the way of your business and how you run your business.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So one way or another, you're creating a tool that can either be managed by the client, which now provides them with renewed visibility into what is happening as data comes in and out of your environment. You mentioned about how AI has democratized the ability to exercise and execute attacks in new and innovative ways, sort of zero-day attacks, if you will. How important is it, or what is taking place on the intelligent traffic analysis side of the equation to detect these things? In other words, are we leveraging the power of the networked economy? In other words, if it happens there, it can update everywhere. How is it that you're looking at the data that's coming in and out of that environment, whether it's through your SaaS resource or through your on-prem deployments? to make sure that you're spotting activity that might turn into a DDoS attack?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're looking at behavior, and of course we can do AI. We can use AI as well in our DDoS intelligence. So one of the feeds that we have is it uses AI to, extrapolate and pull data. But the other really cool thing that we have, and I spoke to you about this before, is Core, where we have essentially created this cloud data lake, right? So this is the ability to pull and ingest feeds from across the network. So, use the WAF example. We could pull those feeds. So all that traffic that's coming in from the WAF, and we can create allow list. So we'll generate an insight and create an allow list, and essentially stop that WAF or the other application from being bogged down from traffic. Because we also know that these things, they're not purpose-built solutions like our solution is. So we use it as a way to filter at the edge, before it gets to that WAF. And so it can't be inundated by this malicious traffic.
And are you finding that, sort of web application firewalls are something that bad actors are focusing on as an area to try to exploit?
Oh yeah. I mean, so layer 7 and, layer 7 by default, people think application, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is application layer, right? So the WAF is, and you also see that it's when we're talking about mid-size market business and SMB, they often will think they misassume that a WAF is good enough, right? And it's not. It's a great tool on its own, but it's not a purpose-built anti-DDoS solution, right?
Right.
And so, and there's also other things that come along with the WAF, a lot of tuning, and there's a lot of things that go along, which also speak to, hey, do you have dedicated support for this, right? And you don't. So we offer a way to stop the traffic ingress, that malicious traffic ingress. So you're not dealing with fighting a WAF, because we've also heard from customers who have these tools, and hey, look, this is a major pain point for us. So this is why we're going to the market with again, adaptive and flexible way to take the feeds that we're getting from these tools in the network and help produce insights to stop it before these tools become taken down by all this traffic, by the volume of traffic, I should say.
Excellent. You mentioned earlier on, and this is one of the things that I think was very attractive to Belden when you submitted your application, that intersection of IT and OT, information technology with the operational technology. There's, I think it's fair to say, a discrepancy in how it is. There's a gap into how it is that you secure those two networked environments: the operational technology environment, which governs how the sensors and robots talk to each other on a shop floor, as for instance, versus the more traditional IT operations. Are you bridging that gap? And what is the exploit? What is the opportunity that bad actors are seeing to sort of jump into that scene between IT and OT?
Yeah, so I think any sort of entrance point, like a VPN or a firewall would be a good example, is a way, right? It can provide a conduit. One of the things that I like to think about how we can help is this idea that we've also, it's a capability that's been spun out of Core, zero trust admission control, right? So again, a way to sit out of band. So we're not proxying traffic. So again, back to the OT latency sensitive conversation, totally understood. But if you sit out of band and you're able to log the permitted attempts, right, by looking at behavior, right, and you're able to block that access point from malicious, ingestion of traffic, right? We know that these OT devices are running on legacy software, and that they're sensitive to patches, and we understand these things. So the way I think about it, if you could have something that would control the ingress of malicious traffic, and based off of the feeds that, hey, Lane logs in every day. This is his behavior. I'm logging that, right? And I'm trusting you for a period of time. But see, the thing is that because we're out of band and we can sit well before, again, and we're not proxying anything, we're not adding latency. So we're again providing a protective layer for that OT environment. And that to me is, I think, the convergence, right? And then again, to your point about bridging IT OT, yeah, it allows one management plane so you can see everything.
So here's how I'm interpreting what you're saying.
Sure.
It sounds like we have an opportunity here to put in the kind of solutions that Corero is offering to begin to learn the behavior in the first place. So we typically think of human behavior, human attempts to access resources. On the OT side, you're also tracking the behavior of machines themselves. What a particular asset that's executing a signal transfer or ping or some sort of sharing of data. And am I correct in assessing that allows you to sort of model out what acceptable or normal behavior looks like, whether you're a human, whether you're a piece of software, whether you're a sensor or another piece of hardware that is in the business of sending data across internally or across borders to external resources. And once you've learned that, you can begin to understand anomalous behavior and intercept it. Am I capturing that correctly?
Exactly. Very well said. That's exactly on point.
It really goes to the power of AI to sort of evolve, right? So additionally, when we rolled out solutions, there'd be version 1.0 and then version 1.1 and so on. And until we rolled out that update, there would be no change. You're describing a much more dynamic situation where the AI learns as behaviors are executed. Tell me a little bit about how you've gotten to that point and what that means. Do your customers sort of understand that distinction between these modern AI enabled applications that evolve over time as they learn from you, as opposed to a more static security solution or even a secure SaaS delivered solution?
Yeah, I think the real conversation is the scale, which is what you touched on, right? Because what's happening is if we can't wait in between, right? So we're learning because we're pulling in so much data, we're learning. So, if something happens in, one financial area, part of the globe, hey, we can take that insight and say, well, maybe this particular actor will use the same exploit somewhere else, right? So we can share that data and that's how AI allows us to scale, and then take that feed again and just disseminate it across our entire network. So I think it's just the scale and the speed, and we see our customers a lot of value because, again, it goes back to the automated nature of it. It's not that we're going to deploy these things there's always a checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
So there just should be a human element that's saying, hey, this isn't right, or this is gonna be because we don't want false positives, right? We don't want to kick out the good guys. We don't want to stop good traffic, but the scale and the pervasiveness of AI, and also the way that, again, in the beginning of the conversation, we talked about how these attacks can be scaled up using AI, calls for a measure such as what we're doing today. And it just allows us to proliferate that intelligence across our network. And it's of extreme value because, again, it's that proactive nature that keeps you in the game and keeps services available.
So as we sort of wind down, Mike, tell me a little bit about how your message is being received. It's certainly, you're getting critical acclaim, right? So I think external observation and this idea of deploying this dynamic ability to do the intelligent traffic analysis and to manage zero trust access based on traditional and traditional control measures, as well as this ability to understand evolving behaviors. How is that message being received? Where are you getting traction? Are you still going in through the traditional CISO front? Do the OT people are typically sort of in the operations side of the equation getting involved? How are things coming? How are you going to market?
Yep. So surprisingly enough, it's very easy to productize DDoS services, right? And so, of course, the CISOs are going to play a huge role in decision making, and also the people that report to them, right? They're the ones that are doing a lot of like, hey, is this going to fit in our stack? How does this work along such and such? But really, it's the business value that we're really getting in front of, and you're seeing that those are the people that are really eager to consume, right? Because again, we're painting the picture of the cost, right? So, can you afford to be down, right? You know, can you afford to not have this solution? And maybe because one of the things, people think about, well, there's downtime, right? But then there's, now you've got government regulations. Like you're seeing this in the EU, you're seeing this pop up all over the world. You've got to report these incidents. There's things that you have to meet a standard, right? And so we're there to help you meet that standard. And that is a business pain point, right? So of course it's always going to be a technical pain point as well. And that pain point, that message is slightly different, right? And so that's where we get into, hey, look, it's a topology thing. Like we'll fit in where you want, right? We can talk about customizing the architecture to exactly how you want. And we have those conversations all day long. But really the most sticky conversation is, hey, look, here's the cost associated downtime. Again, going back to the point of the democratization of the attacks, these attacks keep going up 38% year over year, right? They just keep growing. And the other thing is, these attacks are getting smaller. They're getting harder to spot. So they're just sort of dripping, right? Coming in and they're changing vectors very fast. And so how do we see that? You've got to get in and see that. And that could be also an issue for the OT world, by the way, right? Because these smaller attacks uniquely critical, right? For that machinery, right? And that world. So it's painting that picture and understanding, hey, the externalities associated with call time, the regulations, the trust, the SLA, the money associated with that is the driver. And that is what I've been going out and evangelizing.
Interesting. And I imagine that's especially true in the mid-market where they may not have the specialized knowledge and expertise that is typically associated with a large enterprise to begin rolling these out. And again, am I correct in saying that this is delivered as an effect of managed service if you want? Are you working with managed service providers to bring this to market?
We do. We have many partners, but we have many MSSPs that we work with. We have some great alliances. I mean, that's the other thing, right? So we've got great alliances. So, if you're a GTT customer with a tier 1 ISP, you can get them from them, right? Act Cloud, right? If you need a hybrid solution, we can facilitate that. If you've got Juniper routers, guess what? We'll run on that router, right? As I alluded to earlier. It doesn't mean that we only work with those guys. Those are just key alliances that we have. So we're really looking at all of the ways to go to market and trying to check all of these boxes. Again, the story really that I led with adaptable, DDoS protection, right? It's really about fitting in where you are, because we want to reduce the barriers to entry. Whereas saying, hey, you've got to buy our box off the shelf and it's got to come like this. No. We want to work how, that sort of interoperability across, making it easy for you. That easy button, the peace of mind, again, going back to the business pain points, it's really critical to us.
Outstanding. Mike, what a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much for taking the time to help us understand the evolving threats posed by modern AI strengthened and now democratized DDoS attacks, and how it is that services like Corero can be brought to bear to mitigate that threat. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you, Larry.